So our Texas landmark mesquite smoked single malt, we take 30% of the base malt and we hand smoke it in-house for just a few hours with about 5 pounds of wood. It's not a whole lot. We're just trying to get a light smoke on it. If you've ever had Scotch that's smoky, it's kind of the Texas twist to that Scottish style.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see.
All right. You may pick up a little bit of chocolate on that mid palate on the nose. We use a little bit of chocolate malt in it. So it gives a little bit of that chocolatiness. You might get a little bit of honey. And then the mesquite smoke is very subtle on the back end, not real intense.
You know, very, very Texas.
It is, yes.
You know?
Nice transition from that honey to that chocolate, then that mesquite, and that chocolate and that mesquite just pair so well together, in my opinion.
You know, during the break, I actually had some chocolate, and now I'm even tasting it a
Yes.
bit more.
It'll boost that flavor compound a lot, yes.
And they say, like, okay, what's a good pairing for whiskey, right? Is
Chocolate's always a great one.
chocolate, right?
Yes.
Man, I can really taste it now.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful, especially if you're a big chocolate fan, so.
I am. So Josh, tell me from your early beginnings, you know, to thinking about, okay, I want to be, you're in the military, I want to, you know, dabble with distilling. Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, in the military, we like to have fun and drink a little bit. So instead of buying beer all the time, we decided, why not try to make it ourselves? And at this point in my life, I became very fascinating on how just everything's made from scratch. You know, generally we go to the grocery store and we buy something that's pre-made. Well, how is it done traditionally? How it used to be done before we had industrialization of our food products. And once you start learning about it, and especially the different types of grains that you can use, especially here in Texas, Texas farmers have done a great job of supporting the distilleries. And that really gives a great profile of what Texas can truly be.
Right. And being in San Antonio, that, you know, when you think of San Antonio, it's kind of that gateway to South Texas, right?
Yes.
And then, so the mesquite, the limestone, right? So what does that do to influence some of the flavors?
Yeah, so our terroir is what we're speaking about here. And when we're looking at San Antonio specifically, it's a concrete jungle. So that concrete is going to hold in a whole lot more heat even throughout the night compared to the countryside that cools down a little bit quicker. So that's going to greatly impact our flavor profiles within our whiskey because it's hotter for longer periods of time. And then when we move up to the winter, it's very cold at night. And in, you know, Texas, it's hot during the daytime. So we're getting those big fluctuations between night and day where that whiskey can expand and contract throughout that cask to really absorb all those flavors.
I love that. And you've also played with, speaking of flavors, you've actually toyed around with some of those Texas flavors too, right?
Oh yes, definitely.
I hear brisket.
Yeah, we did do a brisket whiskey at one point. So what we did is we took smoked dehydrated brisket, garlic, clove, jalapenos, and macerated it in the whiskey for a few months. And when we removed it, it had that nice brisket flavor throughout the whiskey. And then we used it for Bloody Marys. So I mean, it's, what are we going to use this thing for? But perfect Bloody Marys. Perfect.
Love it. No burnt ends where you can just like.
I wish we did try them, but at that point, the brisket absorbs a lot of that whiskey, and it's just ethanol on the back end of it. It's pretty hard to eat.
I bet. And so at Ranger Creek, you're not only a distillery. You're a brewery as well, right?
Correct, yes. We were the first combined brewery and distillery. If you look at our name, we're Ranger Creek Brewing and Distilling. So after Texas decided that you had to have two separate entities. So we were grandfathered in. And what's unique about the way our facility is set up, all the distilling and brewing equipment is in the same warehouse. We're the only ones like that in Texas because after you had to have a wall at least separating the brewing and distilling equipment.
Oh, okay. And so when did that happen? When did that transition happen where you were grandfathered in?
I believe it was about 2, 3 years after we opened, if I remember correctly. It was one of those things, we were told, hey, you may have to change up your design. And we
Yeah.
said, well, you approved it. So
Yeah,
luckily
yeah,
we were
yeah.
grandfathered in at that
Well,
point. Yeah.
that's one thing that I love about like even doing business in Texas. If you've been doing it for a while, there's this grandfather law that like I know there's one place that I love in Brownsville. They do barbacoa, beef head barbacoa. And they were grandfathered in, and they're the only one in the state that they can actually do it in the ground.
Wow.
And serve it to the public.
Love me some barbacoa.
Right?
Yeah.
Now you got to do like some kind of a pairing with it.
Well, we
Yeah.
actually made a aquavit not long ago,
Okay.
and it has cumin and a bunch of other spices that work really great with barbacoa. So yeah.
Nice. So what makes it unique about having that combination? Like, are people looking when they get there? Are they looking for that mix of both, or just are you have the beer fans or the whiskey fans? How does that come together?
So, beer and whiskey have a very close relationship to one another. Beer is made from grain, and so is whiskey. So you can just take what we call distiller's beer, and we distill it, and you create whiskey. So on a tour showing that symbolic relationship between the two really surprises our customers because not that kind of knowledge is known by everybody. Second, it also gives our customers the option of having one or the other. Some people like to drink whiskey, some like to drink beer. So, and it's also allowed us for some cross products, which we can create, like our bourbon barrel series of our beer and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I've had some of that.
Oh yeah. They tend to be about 9 to 12% alcohol.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I usually
right.
recommend to drink it a little bit slow, but they're wonderful. Yes.
Yeah. So what have you learned along the way of actually doing it at home and being self-taught to actually producing and distilling more in like for a business in the private sector?
Great question. So I would say doing it before you start professionally, you get the core aspects of it down. So when I moved into the professional setting, I already had an understanding of what I was doing. So I was able to focus my knowledge on what I don't know, like aging whiskey, for instance. That's not something you normally do at home.
Yeah.
So the barrel aging process was a big step up from there. A lot of knowledge, and 10 years in, there has been a lot that has been learned and a lot more to be learned.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so what'd you do? You just like got on YouTube and like, okay, how do I do this?
Trial and error. So, sometimes we fail at things, but that is our best lesson right there.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Why is Texas agriculture important into the process of making whiskey?
It's important because we worked closely with the farmers. The farmers really listen to us sometimes on new types of grain that we're looking at doing. They're very innovative of bringing back old styles of grain, like heirloom grains that were almost lost.
Yeah.
And it gives us the opportunity to really play around and experiment what Texas whiskey can become through different flavors from our terroir. For instance, we just did a whiskey that was made with blue, red, and white corn, and all of them taste uniquely different. And each one is a little bit of difference that you can get that's a part of Texas.
Yeah. And what are the flavor profiles that you get from those three that you mentioned?
So our red corn, it's called Bloody Butcher. It has a very hibiscus, strawberry, rose hips kind of characteristic, very unique. The white corn is a little bit more neutral and mineral-like, and the blue corn has a little bit more of an earthy kind of characteristic to it. Yeah.
Good for a blue corn tortilla.
Yes,
too.
exactly. Yeah, one of my favorites.
So if somebody wanted to get into distilling and maybe still doing it at home, what advice would you give them?
Well, first off, doing it at home, I wouldn't recommend because it is federally illegal, though Texas is looking at changing the laws here on some of that soon. If you want to learn, go to your local distilleries and ask them if they have positions open or an apprenticeship program. A lot of distilleries have that. Getting involved in your local groups, wherever you may live, there may be a local group that may be able to help you out and get started on things. Home brewing beer is a great way to get started, just to learn how to do your mash and learning about different types of grains.
Distilling whiskey is a process, and it's a bit of a journey, right?
Yes, it
So
is.
you have to sit there and wait, and sometimes 3 years, sometimes 5, 6 years. So what goes through your mind as you're waiting in that, being patient to ensuring that you have a quality product?
Well, it all starts off from the beginning with the correct mash that it's done properly, proper distillation. You want a good product to start off with. You can't put a bad product into a barrel and expect it to become better. But what I'd say is one of the most interesting things is when you first fill that barrel and hammer in that bung and it's sealed, you know you're going to be waiting for a while. And you think about the next time you're going to look at that barrel, try it, may be a while. Now, we do have quality control measures, which we check barrels every so often and sample them to see if we need to make any adjustments over time. And that way, we can diagnose a problem before it becomes out of control.
A real problem.
Yeah, like heavy tannins or whatever the case may be. There's little techniques we can use that make the whiskey better over time.
Okay. So what are you looking for when you evaluate the barrels as they're aging?
There's quite a few different things. First off, I'm looking at, well, how old is this whiskey and how should it be at this standpoint? We don't want too many tannins in it, that really heavy oakiness, because it makes the whiskey quite unpalatable. But I'd say what we're looking for the most as time goes by is what we call roundness in a whiskey. That characteristic there, it's warming going down, but not harsh. The alcohol just transitions on the palate with a warming characteristic, with all your flavor compounds, the right types of sugars that you're looking for, and not over tannic.
No, I mean, I think definitely when you think about what you have to do, like it's interesting because when I'm, maybe grilling a steak. Yeah, or making carnitas, you have like this like, oh, I want to make sure it's right and dig it. No, but you have to let it sit.
Yeah, you can't rush it. Patience.
Yeah, you can't rush it.
The military taught me a little bit of patience too, so yeah, it helped out. So
Yeah. So Josh, sitting here and looking back at day one, what advice would you give to yourself?
Patience and attention to detail. Attention to detail is always most important. If you mess up in one step, it can mess up the rest of the process. So I'd say that would be the biggest aspect right there.
Well, with that, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you.
And cheers.
Cheers.